Hey all, welcome again. Maybe in a couple of years I'll realize that what I see in the preview is different from what actually is here. Uh, Excuse the lighting, got an LED panel up, but I want to do a softbox or something with it because it is rather harsh the way it is, even though I'm bouncing it off a wall. It's kind of weird. But the other light burned out and the bulbs cost more than the light. So forget that. Let's pull up chat, make sure I'm not talking to myself. And hope everyone's doing okay today. It's actually a little chilly here, going from the dripping in sweat every single day, and bam, all of a sudden it's 65 at night, 70, low 70s during the day or something, which I love. But it's digging stuff out of the closet I didn't think I'd be wearing for quite a while. Well, quite a while, another month. Okay. Tech Guy Brian, hello. Choya Ranch, Justin, thanks for helping out. Moz 195, Kevin Dark, Pink Omega, Matt Millen, Jan Hunger. Thank you for joining us from Amsterdam. And apologies to Grim. I thought I looked around and because it's hard to find. Sunday just didn't work out with some family stuff, and so I looked around. I was trying to figure out when to do this power hour instead of just waiting another week. But I poked around and I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, no one's from 7 to 8. ST Vapes, True Vapor Show, 8 to 9, and Dimitri and Phil sometimes from 9 to 10. But oops, Grim has his live right now, so my apologies for stepping on the second half of that. But we'll see if anyone joins us tonight and go over a few things. Chat a little bit. Spectre, hello, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Spectre. It's uh, it's so weird to have cooler weather. This distinct, and it even smells like fall, autumn. And there's a huge park near me, so I've got that. The trees smell different. The soil smells different just when it gets colder. Doesn't have that sun-baked smell. Chris Robertson, thanks for joining us. Tover Yonder, hello. Jose Lopez, Scott Bogford, hello. Excuse me. Do the usual, but I'll say this a bunch more times, but battery space mooch in the front of any question. Nice bright red tag, no hashtag, no @ symbol, nothing like that needed. Um, it lets me know that it's a question for me as opposed to inter-watcher chat. It's a better term for that, I'm sure. V-Dog, welcome. Scott Bogfoot, the stink of autumn. The only time it stinks is when they refertilize the soil around the trees here in Riverside Park here in Manhattan. It's usually done more towards winter, but they just don't age. I think they take the horse manure and other things from the mountain patrols and stuff. I don't think they age it quite enough because it still really, really smells bad. And on a cold winter day, you can't smell it. But when you get those days when it starts to warm up, it doesn't have to be warm. It could be 50 degrees or something. Then the smell is just it's just overwhelming. It's nauseating. Interchat banter. I like that. James Stout, hello. We'll dive into a question, then I'll do got a couple things to show you. Jose Lopez, I'm getting my first 21700 mech and I'm trying to find batteries. What kind should I get? I've been looking at the Samsung 30Ts. Any recommendations? Samsung 30Ts are great. They're the hardest hitting, highest rated 35 amp battery we can get. So that makes them pretty good for a mech. But that's if you're running at higher power levels. If you're at under 25 amps, I recommend the Molicel P42A. Uh, you get you get to use the higher capacity. It'd still get a decent current rating, but if you're up there, you want the absolute hardest hitting. The 30T only hits harder than the P42A for about the first third of the discharge. So if you're taking 20 puffs, you want the hardest hitting, and then you're replacing the battery, you're that kind of mech user, or you find yourself to be that kind of mech user, then the 30T is better. Otherwise, the P42A still hits pretty hard and will last longer. And after the first third, will hit harder than the Samsung 30T. So if you're bringing it down to like 3.6 volts or something, and you're under 25 amps, try the Molicel P42A. And I've got the Dreamer with the Iconic today, and I dug deep into the stash, and I've got some of that Hit That Donuts Raz Hole, aged a year, just over a year right now, so that's fantastic. And I've got all 3 test stations running, so I won't be using, well, I can't be doing any vaping until later tonight. But what's been great this past week is now I actually want, lungs filled with hot vapor, whereas, on a 85-degree humid day, the last thing I want is fill my lungs with hot vapor. It's like, ah, no. But now with this cool weather, standing outside, it's glorious, and I can switch over from the fruits to the desserts and the bakeries. Um, like Raz Hole and Hit That Donuts Chocolate and a couple others that I have here. Um, and I love those hot and just filling the lungs up with that vapor. So that'd be nice. Uh, got the testing for the Vector Plus. Is that even? This is the cell that's going to be shipping with the VapX Geyser kit pod, 100-watt pod. And finally finished the testing on this. These are, quote, the production cells. They had other cells with some debates on ratings. They rated 40 amp constant, 80 amp uh, max. Both of those are preposterous, but it's a very good cell. They say it's a VT66A, but still trying to verify that. Good performance, though. And so it's going to be 6 of one, half dozen of the other kind of video coming out for this one. And then did an interesting test on some Molicel P26As where I compared. I have to post it, but took some 2018 Molicels that I had sitting here, and also that a vendor was kind enough to send me that they had, and some 2020 cells that MPE, the global distributor for Molicel for the vaping community, sent me, and did comparisons. How much of a performance loss is there from Molicel sitting around for 2 years versus newer ones just a few months ago? Essentially identical. There was no loss of performance. That doesn't guarantee that there won't be cells that don't stand up to it, and these tests you can't apply to any other cell. But I think overall, 2 years of storage is not a death sentence as long as they don't reach too low voltage. It's not really hot or anything like that. And let's see. Oh, I don't know if you can see this battery. This is from the laptop that powers the main discharge station where I do all the high current discharging. A little $300 laptop, that's all I need. And it's been plugged in, and this pack fully charged for 5 years. And finally, recently, uh, turned it around. I was moving some cables around for the test station, and I noticed the back had popped open 3/8 of an inch. It actually, when it puffed up, it ripped two screws out of the mounting holes. So this is a lipo that cannot be used anymore. Never used puff lipos. But since there are circuit boards in here and 3 cells and who knows what kind of wiring stuff, I thought I'd make an interesting teardown, but I've got to get into this connector to do a discharge. To get it down to a safe level because I don't feel like having a lipo fire in my face while I'm filming a video. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting to take a look not only at a laptop battery that's a little more complex than some we might normally see, but also because it's puffed up and gives me a chance to talk about this and to do a video about puff batteries. And oops, hold on just a second. Okay, got bunch of other things going on here that may have to be addressed as time comes on, but we'll see what that turns into. And that is the show and tell for tonight. Let's see what we got for La Question. Spectre asked, did I get my hands on the new Evolve Reflex? No. Evolve Reflex. Haven't heard of that. Is it a board? Since you're saying Evolve, or is it a mod of theirs that with their boards in it? Is that the new 100 watt? board or something. Chris Robertson, have you ever tried fitting in 21700 into a Wismec Luxottic NC? No. It seems to be a lot of wiggle room. Well, just go very carefully if you're starting to file away and remove things, stuff like that. But no, I haven't tried it. Takes 2700s. Just make sure it still lines up with the top and bottom contacts since you're using a fatter battery of 21700. Zero Friends ask, is it safe? No. To put an electrical to put electrical tape on a battery just to avoid battery rattle on a mech tube. My L Thunder 21700 came without a extra battery spacer. Um, for that one, actually, I can, because normally when someone asks, is it safe? The answer is no. But for this one, it doesn't, that doesn't add, I can't see it adding any inherent, wow, pollen is crazy today. That's one problem with the grass pollen with autumn and the breezes we get coming off the park here. Whew. Uh, it's not inherently dangerous. You have to use your best judgment for your setup. Um, I would say put the tape, around a couple places, but electrical tape has a really good grip. Not the adhesive side, the non-adhesive side doesn't slide very easily on against metal. So just be very careful that to make sure you can get the cell back out of your mech once you drop it in there. Um, I'd say, use enough electrical tape maybe to not hear the rattle, but it might still rattle in there. You're gonna have to use your best judgment for that because I don't know anything about well, I've seen the L Thunder, but I don't know anything about it. But I can't imagine essentially the tape centering a cell in a mech would cause any extra danger. I just don't know. Scott Bogfoot, during the 90s or any time in general, or was I annoyed by seeing New York City featured in just about every TV show and movie? Or are you kind of proud of it? Proud? I don't know if I was proud, but I was always interested to see what neighborhoods they were in. Like Law and Order SVU is filmed often in my neighborhood, right around my apartment, in fact. Lots of the locations within a block or two of here, or several blocks from here. So, or like You've Got Mail, that wonderful comedy with Tom Hanks, and I forgot the other actors and actresses. That was filmed in my neighborhood, the Upper West Side. In fact, it's sort of an homage to the Upper West Side. And so I always like seeing all the places that I've gone to that I go shopping and Zabar's that I went to and in other places that they were in the movie. So pride, proud, no, but I am very curious. I love seeing the locations or have I been there or not been there? How much have they changed over the years? Sovereign Knight. The Molicel P42A batteries feel quite premium in appearance and performance. They're still working strong. I'm glad they're working well for you. Zero Friends. You asked the question 3 times. Are you still asking it? Matei Nagy, welcome. Spectre is saying New York real estate is insane. 900 square foot home, $1 million. Yeah, if you want the junk, you can buy $1 million one. It's 3-4 million. What I just saw yesterday, the median price for a co-op was about 3/4 of a million, and then the median price for a condo, I think, was about 1.2 million. But you've got, the outer boroughs further away from the city in Queens and Brooklyn, Staten Island, where the prices come way down. And then you've got prime neighborhoods in Manhattan, which are ridiculous. A tiny studio could be $3 million in a prime building, in a prime location. That might be an exaggeration, 2 million. But certainly, like in this building here, 2 bedrooms are a couple million um, on here, and then as much as a couple million. One's facing out front, higher floor, etc. Because the Upper West Side, the prices have held steady when we've had problems like in the recession and now. where some other neighborhoods will drop down a little bit. But here they stayed pretty steady, which is nice because I bought this apartment about 20 years ago. So battery space Mooch in the front of any questions. Choya Ranch had a London flat, 500 square foot, about $500,000. Wow. Zero Friends, is Nicore D4 a good charger for 2700 or any batteries? Don't know. Haven't tested the Nicore D4. Um, they've got a decent rep. The Nicores, I think I've tested. Forgot which ones I tested, but no big problems with them. The only ones where I go, sort of universally across the board, I say not to get are the AC chargers, the chargers with the AC power supply built in. I know that can be very convenient depending on your setup, but they generate a lot of heat because the power supply's in it, whereas a USB powered charger or one with an external laptop power supply brick takes some of the heat out of the unit and puts it somewhere else. So you're not heating up the batteries while you're charging them, which reduces their life some. Sovereign Knight, good point about if you're if you're double wrapping cells to make them a little bit wider to fit in a mech tube, I recommend cutting the wrap short a little bit because if you come around the top and come around the bottom, it can be harder for the contacts to reach because you're recessing the contacts by adding wrap on the top and the bottom. So I'd say snip, I don't know, 3/16 of it, 3-4 millimeter off each end, and then center that on the cell, just so you're making it wider, but not making it longer with the wrap part. Justin, thank you for the recommendation. Anybody catching any decent new series? There's like looking at Raised by Wolves, the new Amazon Prime. I always get confused. Netflix, Amazon Prime, new Amazon Prime video, bit of a space sci-fi religion zealot thing going on. Androids. They look kind of interesting. Haven't been in the mood to fire it up yet, but I've got that tagged. Fired up Game of Thrones recently because I'd completely forgotten what was in the first three seasons, and some friends were talking about it. It's kind of nice watching the older seasons again. I didn't realize how important some of the earlier scenes were, and I'm actually understanding some things better by rewatching the older scenes. Fogdog asks, besides the Ardent, what RDAs can thread onto the heavy hitter, as in without the top cap? No idea. The Ardent's the only one I heard them talking about. I don't know what other ones have that threading built in. That'd be a question for Bogan, Mike Vapes, Heavy, and Stan, Tenacious TX Vapes. They'd be the best ones to ask. I just don't know about those threaded, uh, the hybrid RDA. Sorry. Spectre, holy crap. Thank you, sir, so much for the super chat, the super duper super chat. Thank you. That's gonna buy some cells. Spectre says, I can't stick around, but just wanted to show some appreciation and say thank you for all you do, Mooch. Thank you, sir. That was awesome. I'll just buy drugs. I'm not sure which yet, but it will be cells or drugs. Zero Friends was considering maybe the Galeazzi S6. Yeah, the S4 and the S6, the Galeazzi S4 had the recall, but the Galeazzi S6 doesn't have the AC power supply circuitry in the charger. It's in a brick externally. So if it'll be a different circuit board, different circuits. So I don't know anything about the Galeazzi S6. I haven't tested it, but it won't have the same problem the S4 had. It might have a different problem, but it won't have the same problem. But since for any charger, any device can fail, it's rare, but it can fail. Charge on a non-flammable surface when you're around and awake, and you can be there in case anything does happen. A 1,000,000 to 1 shot that something actually happens. Felix, another update on the Galeazzi S4. No issues at all since I put it on DC power. Good, good. Hasn't said 100% with no battery in channel 4 yet, but I'm thinking of getting Extron Dragon or Opus C3100. Uh, yeah, the Opus, see if you can find the C3400. That's the later version. And then I use a C3400 here just for some daily charging and stuff. That's held up pretty well. The Dragon ended up, if you need flexibility in settings, get the Dragon. But my sliders have gotten so stiff that I need two fingers to pull a couple of them down. And lubrication doesn't help. It's just this metal on metal grating. But I haven't heard that from a lot of other people. That may just be because of all the use that I give it. I might, put stuff in and out 10 times a day for months. Okay, 6 times a day. Sovereign Knight, super chat for $2. Thank you. Check out Cobra Kai. Really? The Cobra Kai? It's worth watching? I was just going, oh, what a silly, cash grab kind of remake kind of thing. Ah, okay. So we write that one down, and I'll give that I'll give that one a check. Zero Friends asked if I have a Patreon. Yes, I do. Battery Space Mooch on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/ I believe it's Battery Mooch, one word, when you're doing um, the direct URL. Otherwise, you can go to patreon.com and to Battery Space Mooch. I started $2 a month. About 90% of my posts are only for my patrons. And there's some giveaways. I've got 7 or 8 still in the queue, 7 or 8 things in the queue. And they ask a lot of questions, and they can request tests and go into details and with questions with them that I don't have time for on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. Scott Bogfoot says, once heard that crappy vinyl electrical tape can allow electricity to run along its thin edge. What? Is this something you've heard as well? So it sounds like the adhesive is they're saying the adhesive is conductive, and because there's nothing different on the edge. But I'm thinking maybe the adhesive squeezes out to the edge, but that would be very high voltage. If you're wrapping it on a 13,000 volt line or something like that, okay. But otherwise, I've never even heard that. Um, so something's conductive. No, I haven't heard that one. Gee, maybe some of the cheap stuff uses slightly conductive. When I'm saying conductive, I mean, it's a million ohms instead of 50 million ohms. Felix says another one, looking at a Sky RC MC3000. Yeah, that one I'd probably recommend more than the others. That did slightly better in the testing overall, but Amazon hasn't had them in stock for a while. Check Progressive RC, one word, progressiverc.com. They have a pretty good selection of chargers. Maybe they have it. They do mostly LiPo chargers with the balancing leads and et cetera for LiPo battery packs for the RC community, radio control community. But maybe they have that one. Thank you, Justin, for the Patreon address. Sovereign Knight recommends that I watch Karate Kid 1, 2, and 3 to get caught up. That might be asking too much of me on there. I remember Karate Kid 1. Never saw 2 and 3. I don't know if I can sit through 2 and 3 just to see Cobra Kai. I'll write it down. A lot of times I'll say, no, no way. And then I end up doing it, watching it, and completely enjoying it. Sometimes I'm just cranky and close-minded. Thank you. Bate Nagy, dear Mooch, period. Battery Space Mooch in the front, please. Wild Will 53, but I caught yours. Normally I'm not here for the live stuff, but I appreciate all you do. Thank you. I have learned so much from you that I would not have learned otherwise. Thank you for your kind words. ST Vapes. Thanks for joining us. Mooch's creeping in on his time zone. Lol joke. How's it going, brother? It's ST. Thanks for okay here. I'm digging the cooler weather. I actually really enjoy lungs of hot vapor now. I am going to be kicking off in half an hour. I will not step on your show because I want to watch it. And but thanks for joining us tonight. Felix brings up a good point. It gets his 5% back on if it tries on Amazon. Well, if you end up waiting too long, but you want the Sky RC, then maybe it's worth it just to end up getting it somewhere else. Jose Lopez is asking for my opinion on lithicore batteries. They say they make all of them, but three of them that I had tested were identical in performance and appearance to Samsung and LG cells. So, in my opinion, those three were rewrapped, and they're they're not telling the truth that they make them all. Also, all six of their material safety data sheets, the MSDS, um, were, I believe, they were all identical, and the chemical composition for the cells, and they pointed out all of them being lipo chemistry. And if the rewrap of Samsungs and LGs are not lipo, and they never said they were lipo. So I think they just handed the company that makes these safety data sheets a generic list for chemical composition, which means the fraudulent and fake MSDSs. So I recommend not buying Lithicore because I just don't trust them. To me, it doesn't matter what the performance tests was or weren't. We can choose from a huge number of cells. Why buy ones from the companies that aren't telling us the truth? That's just my opinion, though. Justin asked if I know if any of my recommended vendors ship to Costa Rica. I don't know, and I don't know who to recommend to check. But I would go, try 18650 Battery Store and Lithium-Ion Wholesale, IMR, Illum, and see. You never know who has a policy to say they're willing to ship internationally. Brad Palmer, how are the 3000 mile 18650 tests going? They're chugging along. Half of them are in cycle life testing. The other half still need the cell testing before I get them on the cyclers. And then it's still going to be 2 months before we see anything. Sovereign Knight says the series will make more sense with season 3 when it is released next year. This is Cobra Kai. Sorry, I forget names and what they said. Okay, please, battery space Mooch in front of any question. Mate Nagy asks, I have two Samsung 30Ts, same age, same usage. The first one is hitting very nice in the mech, but the second isn't hitting as hard. How is this possible? Well, the second one could be fake. The second one could have been damaged or it's reaching the end of its life. It all depends how old it is, how hard it was used. Um, you just may not be using, or you may have other variables that are making you think it's hitting harder, but it's really not. I'd say you got to go back and forth. Have someone else put batteries in a mech and go back and forth with each one at least twice, because if your first vape will be different than what you feel the second battery's vaping feels like. So you want to make sure you go back to the first, and if you're going to go back to the first one, then go back to the second one. So you want to do each battery twice, have someone else hand you the mech with the battery in it and not tell you what's in it, and do the test at least 6 times or something. Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the ass, but you want to make sure there is a difference in the batteries, and if you feel it's not hitting as hard, maybe it's time to replace it with a different battery. Otherwise, don't know. But if it is genuinely not hitting as hard, it's probably damaged, or there's a small chance it could be fake. Jose Lopez has some Lithicore. Oh, you bought Lithicore 18650s for the regulated mods. It's the only ones my local shops carry. So you had to get those. Usually don't want to wait, but ones for my mechs, I can wait in terms of buying. Well, for any battery, the cells may be just fine. For me, it was an issue with the company that maybe say, don't buy the cells. The cells themselves could be perfectly fine. Standard things, keep the wraps intact. If they start acting weird, then don't use them. But otherwise, I didn't have anything inherently against the cells. It was the company and the things the company had said that made me go, don't buy these things. Brian Harris, finally catching alive. Thanking It says, thank you for all you do. Thank you, sir, for the kind words and welcome. Thanks for joining us. RC Laus or R Klaus 72882. I'm just going to call you RC. When people say not the hardest hitting mech, does this put the same amount of strain on your batteries? Okay, so namely, you've got two mechs. One hits harder than the other for the same battery. The one that hits harder will put a bigger strain on the battery because it's allowing more current to flow, which means more power to the coils. so it hits harder. Uh, there's not a really big difference unless you got a crappy stainless steel mech and an ultra high performance copper mech. Then there can be about a 10-watt difference in how hard they hit. But that's on a 100-watt vape. So even then, that's only about a 10% difference in the power. It's just not that huge of a difference on the strains. Technically, yes, a harder hitting mech strains the batteries more, but does that make a practical difference in the battery life and in the safety levels? Not really. But I recommend staying under the rating of the battery anyway. Justin says local shop carriers lift the core too because the markup's better. I tried to tell them about Molicel, but they don't care because Molicels are expensive and the markup is smaller, so they don't make as much money. The almost the worse the sell, the more a shop's going to carry them because the better the markup. AWT and Basin and Enoch and sales like that are fantastic markups you can get on those. So that's what the shops are going to carry. Scott Bogford asks if I do any unconventional battery testing or just the methods shown in the videos. Well, the stuff I do for my clients, the day job clients, could be considered maybe very unconventional. I've done battery pack, ultra capacitor, hybrid packs they're called for starting internal combustion engines, 1100 amp starting current. So I'll do an 1100 amps for 100 milliseconds to 1 second. Then you drop that down to about 100 or 200 amps or so. Then you drop that down to like 20 to 40 amps to simulate an internal combustion engine start. And once you unstick the engine, you're dropping down from 1100 amps down to 100 or 200 amps. Then once the engine is going, you've got the alternator can help out with some things. You've got you know, dropping from 100, 200 amps down to like 20 amps or something like that. That'd be unconventional. I used to do destructive testing, not anymore. That can be probably considered unconventional. You get a lot of complex for electric vehicle testing. You're simulating different runs, different levels that it's being used. So you've got different pulsing and ramping up and ramping down. Uh, Ultra low current leakage testing when you're trying to figure out how much self-discharge the battery does. Essentially, you're charging the battery up for several days and then measuring the current that flows from the charger into the battery that essentially the battery needs to stay fully topped off. But what you're actually measuring now is the 50 microamps, 100 microamps or something like that, that the battery is self-discharging, so it keeps pulling it from the power supply. For some uses, it's like remote sensing and things like that. If you've got cells that are going to be outdoors for 10 years or something like that, you need to measure, okay, I've had 5 days of cloudy weather, so I'm not getting a lot of solar power recharging. I'm going to need to factor in how much the battery is fading it on its own over 10 years or something like that. Mix that equation in with all the other power usage to other equations. So the self-discharge testing is important too. Zero Friends asked, what is the best 2700 battery I can recommend on a mech on a 0.12 build? Well, use your Ohm's law equation, calculate what the current draw is. Um, let's see, the Molicel 2700, I think those 25 amp. I think the highest rating is 25 amps on this. But I think the Molicel right now, you can check out Minding Your Mods episode 31. I actually don't remember what my recommendation was. I think was it the Molicel? I don't remember. I haven't talked about 2700s in so long. But check that out or check the link in the description section below to my blog at ECF. Get my recommended batteries table, and you can see the recommended cells that I have there for 2700. And just run your Ohm's law equation. Make sure you're staying, I recommend staying within the rating. A lot of people don't stay within the rating, but I recommend staying within the rating. It helps the battery last longer, gives you a little bit of a safety margin, and you get better performance from the battery when it's not run as hard. There's not as much battery voltage sag. Sovereign Knight says, when it comes to batteries, he skips the cheapos, only wants the best. That's why he watches my videos. Thank you, sir. Yeah, the things like the Molicel and stuff, they cost more, and they're slightly bigger, ever so slightly larger in size, or a third of a millimeter, half a millimeter. So that can be a problem in some devices. But these batteries, they're lasting a couple of years, or they should be. So even if a cell costs $10 more per cell, that doesn't matter over 2 years because you're getting better performance. You get to enjoy this better performance every single day for 2 years. You're never going to notice the extra cost. It might be a little tougher at that moment, particularly if you're buying like, 8 cells or something, and each one costs two, three, four, $5 more per cell. But then you don't have to buy anything for 2 years, and you get to enjoy that better performance that you're paying for. Hopefully, you're paying extra money for something that has better performance and not just something that, says we're made for vaping or has a, million amp rating or something like that. Felix has a question. Got one more question for me. Besides the Samsung 35E, what 18650 would you recommend? What 1860 would I use for a 20 series 10 parallel e-bike setup? Well, 20S10P, but I don't know how much you're drawing per cell. If you are under 5 to 7 amps, take a look at the Panasonic NCR 18650GA. That was the best performer of the ones I tested. I forgot, what is it, 3200 milliampere hour or something? But I think it performs better than the 35E at once you're up in the 5 to 7 amp range. If you're down under, if you're like 2 or 3 amps per cell, which let's say a 10P, 20, 30 amp, oh no, you're probably drawing more than that, like 5 to 7 amps if you got a 10P pack. Try the Sanyo NCR 18650GA. If you're 5 to 7 amps. Once you get up to 10 amps or so, these ultra high capacity batteries, they're useless. There's too much voltage sag. Above 7 amps or so, then go to like Samsung 30Q. King Justice sends blessings my way. Mooch, I had learned a lot from you as a new vapor of 1 year and a half. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I'm glad my testing's been useful. Justin, I estimated the Sanyo and Molly cell both around 30 amps. Justin, thank you. For the 2700s? Okay, thank you. Battery Space Mooch in the front of any questions. Robert, I caught yours just by chance. Is the VTC5 by Murata a real 30 amp drain 18650? They rated 30 amps, but that's a non-continuous rating. And that's the way Murata and Sony work. They rate them for use in electric vacuum cleaners, power tools, and things like that. If you're comparing the VTC5 to any other battery, it's 20 amp continuous battery. So, it's got the same rating as the Samsung 25R. It hits about as hard, maybe ever so slightly harder. The VTC5, it's a basic 20 amp battery. The VTC5A or VTC5D, monocell P26A, better cells, hit harder, run for longer, and just better cells overall. Scott Botford is wondering if anyone has a recommendation where to learn about e-bikes before buying one. Um, E-bikes themselves? No, I don't know myself. Be kind of cool to have one here in New York. I still think they're illegal technically, but you're just seeing a lot more of them because a lot of people don't want to be in the subways because of that pandemic situation. The subways really aren't crowded except for little narrow windows because they pulled back on service, even though very few people are riding them. They pulled back on the number of the subways being run, so you're not getting a lot of crowds all the time like you always did. So they want to be able to get around, and Uber and cabs are expensive as heck, so they're getting e-bikes. Show your ranch, thank you. What have we got? Oh, 15, 20 minutes left before after this, head over to ST Vape's channel, Couch's Two Vapor Show. That's always a lot of fun. They've got real topics, unlike some other shows. Joke. And it's always fun watching, and I'll be catching it as I make dinner. Sovereign Night. I love the Sanyo NCR 18650 650GA, though there's a Panasonic variant as well. I'm told the Panasonic version is slightly worse than the Sanyo. Well, there's the 18650G, which is the 3550 milliampere hour cell. The A is what, 3400? The B is 30, maybe the B is 3200 something. Yeah, those are like 5 amp rated cells, 4.8 amp or something like that, 3.7 to 4.8 amp or something. So you get a lot more sag. If you're down at like 2 amps or something, that's fine. Otherwise, I recommend the Sanyo. So, friends, has to hit the sack now. Thank you for all you do, Mooch. I'll be subscribing to your Patreon now. Thank you for your support. More power and God bless. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let me check this. Be right back. Little things here that you have to do. I really thought this test was going to run. Okay. I didn't think the test was going to, yeah, excuse me, going to be free that soon. That was kind of weird. I looked at the wrong screen when I sat down. I looked at the actual feed as opposed to the phone that's up here. And I sat down and I saw nothing. And I was like, wait, what? And I realized, no, that's the one that shows me what's going on now. And this one shows what you guys are seeing. I'm easily entertained, as you can see. Battery Space Mooch in front of any question, please. And for those of you who are sitting through me saying that for the sixth time or something like that, my apologies. Certainly, if you see anyone ask me a question, you can let them know, hey, Battery Space Mooch in front. So King Justice asks, Mooch, what's the best 18650 and 2100 mech mods? I haven't tested all those. I haven't tested all the mech mods that can fit those two size cells. I test voltage drop. The the appearance, the maintenance you want to deal with, the weight you want to feel in your hand, side fire or bottom fire, the type of button throw, all that is so subjective. There's no way I can come up and say, what's best or not best, or even what's good or not good, because it's so subjective. Just colors and metal choice and maintenance choices and location of the firing button. You can check my blog at ECF, link in the description below. You know, look at my mech tests and see if one of them. Oh, actually, no, you can just check the videos. You go to my Minding Your Mechs playlist, go down through the videos. You can check my voltage drop table if you just want the best performer. If that is more important than anything else, you don't care about metal or maintenance or appearance or anything, go to my blog at ECF, link in the description section, get my voltage drop table, find the top 2, 3, 4 best performers, and then you can go to my videos, check out their appearance or something, or just go look on websites and see if one of those mechs of those maybe top 3 or 4 best performers, if one of them is something you'd like to buy, fits your budget, especially important too. Yeah, we only get about half the normal number of people watching this time of night, so I guess they're still watching Grim Green or just other things on. Sunday night seems to be a better night, and usually is. And I will be going back to Sunday. I'm not staying Tuesday. This is just delayed because Sunday was no good. Tover Yonder bought 4 P26As 2 years ago for $25, $5 each plus shipping, and they've lost about 10% capacity. The rewrap batteries are more expensive on 1860. Well, that's it. You can spend $10, $13 on a rewrap, and they're no better. A lot of them are China cells that are not great for cycle life, and you're just buying a high number and maybe a name, or some fancy advertising or something like that. They use big words, or scientific terms, or something. These 26As did very well in some of my informal cycle life testing and cold weather testing. They did pretty well too. Thank you, Choya Ranch, for your recommendations. Vapour Caleb. What are my thoughts on the best battery for 21700? There is no best battery for any use because it depends what you're doing with it. If you're vaping a 1.8 ohm coil on a mech, I'm going to recommend a very different battery than if you're vaping a 0.08 coil on a mech. But if you want the hardest hitting cell available, highest current rated one, then the Samsung 30T, period. Uh, if you want a little more running time, a little more vaping time, but still a darn good cell, Molicell P42A. But you can go to Minding a Moz episode 31 video, or go to description section, go to my blog at ECF, and get my recommended batteries tables, and you get some other options if those two don't fit the way you vape or what your priorities are. Scott Bogfoot asks, would I ever use my battery knowledge for evil? Just kidding, because it's a slow night. Thanks for the show. Cheers. If I was using my knowledge for evil, I wouldn't be able to tell anybody I was using my knowledge for evil because I'm evil and I wouldn't let you know what my evil plans were. So sorry, just I'm unable to comment on that question. Favorite Caleb's been running 30 Ts, just haven't looked lately if anything new has come out. Nope. Though I'm getting if you're running a 0.10 to 0.13, you don't care about this new battery coming out. But Molicell's M50A is coming out. I think the cells have actually arrived. Have they arrived? Or they're arriving soon? I forgot what's out in the package office, but I'll be testing those. They're new, very, very, very new. Waiting a long time to see this cell and test it. 5,000 milliamp per hour, 21,700. But this is not some miracle cell. It's going to be 10, I don't know, maybe 15 amp cell. But if it performs better than some of other choices, like the 50E, it's got to perform better than the 48G. That's great because we can always use for moderate and low power vaping, we can always use some more options. The high power vapors have got some fantastic choices. Low power vapors, they can use any cell, but something ultra high capacity ones, they can use some more options. Swirling Merc, I like that. Got my first mech squonk, and I'm super surprised how long the 21 Molicell lasts, all day long at 0.2 ohms. Are regulated chips that inefficient? You might vape differently, but there is some power loss going through a regulated chip. You might vape down below what a regulated mod lets you do. Normally use around 3.23 volts, though in a Mac that's pretty low. You're probably not vaping that low. You may be vaping differently, but I'm glad that you're getting a good performance out of the mech. And when you say 21 Molly, I'm guessing the P42A 21700 Molly cell, but there is some efficiency because you're passing through the circuitry. Topher Yonder, any thoughts on the M50A, the Molly cell? I haven't tested, so don't know. Data sheet, 15 amps, it's rated. If if Molicell is doing their normal non-continuous ratings, then it's probably around more like a 10 amp cell, maybe a little bit more in terms of its true continuous rating, which would put it, about equal to Samsung 50E and what is that VapCell, the G50 or 50G? I always forget which is the Molicell and which is the Samsung. Is it Samsung or LG that they wrap, whether one's G50 or 50G? Oh, my brain's too fried to remember, but I'll be comparing it against the 50E and that VapCell. Favorite Caleb, thank you for the kind words. And we have 7 minutes or so. Sovereign Knight, N50A sounds like a new replacement to use in my Zebralight. M for Mary, 50A. In his Zebralight flashlight, we'll keep an eye on the review. If it's better than the P42A, switch capacity. Well, I can almost say definitely it's better than the P42A if you're down below 7 amps. Above that, P42A is going to be better because it's a power cell. The M50A is an energy cell made for continuous use, continuous running at low current levels. That's what the energy cells are great at. The ultra high capacity ones above 3,000 milliamp per hour and 18650, above 4,000 milliamp per hour on a 21700. So I think the M50A is fantastic. If you're down around 5 amps, 7 amps, M50A is great. Sovereign Knight says that that flashlight pulls up to 10 amps from the board. You're right at the crossover point then. You're probably going to have to test both. If you're running a lot, if you've got that light on all the time, the 10 amps from the M50A is going to heat it up more. It may age a little faster than the P42A, which will just laugh at 10 amps. But you're right at the crossover point where one might be better than the other at the 10 amp point. Neither one will be inherently much better. It'll be how you're using it, and how warm does the cell get when being used. And the M50A will get warmer than the P42A, which will age it faster. Battery space Mooch in the front of your questions. What is the max amp for 21700 theoretically? The game space doctor asks. It's whatever they want to spend the money developing. Right now, it's 35 amps, period. I think they could do a 40, 50 amp one. The ratings have to do with cycle life. There's safety also, but also cycle life. You could take a Samsung 25R at 20 amps, call it a 40 amp battery, but you're only going to get 50 cycles from it. So is that make it a great 40 amp battery? No. If you've got a military or aerospace application where they only want one cycle or something like that, it's powering a missile and the battery's going to blow up when it gets to the other end of its travel anyway. Okay, then they don't care. They might run a Samsung 25R at some preposterous current level. They're going to use different batteries, but let's say they use Samsung 25Rs. They're going to use like thermal batteries or something. They activate when the missile is launched. It's not going to sit there aging inside a missile. Um, so it has a lot to do with cycle life. So you could take a lot of cells and rate them a lot higher right now. But in terms of practical dragging a current through it, 21700, 40 amps certainly. Maybe they could do 50 amps continuous. But the capacity is going to be low because now they got to beef up the thickness of the foil that everything is smeared on. The metal tabs coming off to the top and bottom of the cell have to be made thicker. You need more spot welding points to distribute the current a little bit more. Boy, I think anything over 50, you're going to have some reliability issues. Maybe anything over 40 if they're being used truly continuously and they're getting up to high temperatures. Scott Bogfoot asks, how much time must pass before you consider your test out of date, and is that time different for chargers and batteries? I'd say about 6 months for cells. That's just a made-up number. It really depends, but after about 6 months, I'm kind of wondering if the vendors who rewrap have changed cells or not. Very few of them are doing that nowadays. So you might be able to say, hey, 3 years later, they still got the same cell, and for a lot of them, they're still using the same cell. Um, for chargers, I have no idea because I you never know. Tomorrow they could change a component on the circuit board. Tomorrow they could change the firmware for the chargers and not say anything because they don't think it's a big deal. If they think it's a big deal, they'll give a version number to it and tell everybody, hey, we got a new version coming out. So some people want to buy it. But for chargers, I wouldn't even be able to guess because we just have no idea when a component or firmware changes in the charger. And we've got a couple more minutes. Get your last questions in. Robert Kotevsky, welcome. Which is the highest amp discharge 18650? I have the Samsung 20S, but which is the next best? Samsung 20S is the highest at 30 amps. Next best are your Molicel P26A, Murata VTC5A, and VTC5D at 25 amps. So you get like another 600 milliamp per hour, but you drop down 5 amps. Classic. You can't have ultra high capacity and ultra high current rating, so you're always going to trade off. Not always, but after a certain point, you're going to trade off. Over yonder, I'm going to guess on the Molicel, my rating is going to be 12 amps, 4,800 milliamp hour. Sounds pretty good. I'm probably only going to be sticking to my 5 amp jumps. It's hard, though, with the ultra high capacity cells. Maybe you're right. I think you're probably very close. Summer Night, you're welcome. The game doctor would love a 50 amp battery. Can you imagine? Beautiful. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, 50 amp battery. Mech users could probably be ultra low internal resistance. Mech users would love that. Be able to come along with a 0.08 and go, yeah, I'm within the ratings in a 0.08. Sovereign Knight asks, can rapid charge the P42A at 2 amps without shortening cycle life? P42A is rated at 8 amps for charging, which will shorten life. I would have no issues charging P42As at 2 amps, and I charge mine at 2 amps and higher. I don't care about cycle life, though. That's just me. I'll just buy new cells. I want the darn thing charged now, not for testing, my own personal use. But at 2 amps, I would have no issues with it. Let temperature be the guide. Touch the cell. If it's anything more than a little bit warm, you're shortening the life of the cell. And another question or two. Yeah, summer night, 8 amps. I saw that in the data sheet. I actually had to ask NPE, the distributor, for them. Is there a mistake? No, the P26A is rated, I think, at 6, and then the P42 at 8. But that shortens cycle life. But for something like electric vacuum cleaner, where you're roaring the current out as hard as possible, and when they put it up in the charger, you want to roar the current back in as fast as possible, or power tools. You're on a construction site, you want to charge really, really quickly, and then you want to be able to use it really, really hard. And they don't care that much about cycle life. Well, they do care about cycle life a lot, but they care about getting charged, using it in a high power tool and getting it charged quickly even more. They'll complain about cycle life, but they'll enjoy the performance even more. Yeah, Tover Yonder, 26A at 1 amp, that's great for, everyday use for forever. But 2 amps, I wouldn't worry too much about, unless you got a charger that just gets too hot at 2 amps and starts heating up the batteries, particularly if it's an older Nicor or something, with the AC power supply built inside. Those things get hot as Hades. And I think, no questions here, we're going to call it a night. Head on over to ST Vapes, ST Space Vapes channel. Catch the True Vapor show. Mike Vapes, Vaping Fagan. I don't know if they'll be on tonight, but they're also hosts for the show. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm so tired. For joining me tonight. Thank you for the great questions. Everyone stay safe, stay sane if you want to. And I'll catch you this Sunday for the next episode of the Power Hour.